Book 3, Chapter 8. At Naples, the tomb of Virgil, beetling over the cave of Posillipo, is reverenced not with the feelings that should hallow the memory of the poet, but with the awe that wraps the memory of the magician. To his charms they ascribe the hollowing of that mountain passage, and tradition yet guards his tomb by the spirits he had raised to construct the cavern. This spot, in the immediate vicinity of Viola's home, had often attracted her solitary footsteps. She had loved the dim and solemn fancies that beset her as she looked into the lengthened gloom of the grotto, or ascending to the tomb, gazed from the rock on the dwarfed figures of the busy crowd that seemed to creep like insects along the windings of the soil below. And now, at noon, she bent thither her thoughtful way. She threaded the narrow path, she passed the gloomy vineyard that clambers up the rock, and gained the lofty spot, green with moss and luxuriant foliage, where the dust of him who yet soothes and elevates the mind of men is believed to rest. From afar rose the huge fortress of Sant'Elmo, frowning darkly amidst spires and domes that glittered in the sun. Lulled in its azure splendor lay the Siren's sea, and the gray smoke of Vesuvius in the clear distance soared like a moving pillar into the lucid sky. Motionless on the brink of the precipice, Viola looked upon the lovely and living world that stretched below, and the sullen vapor of Vesuvius fascinated her eye yet more than the scattered gardens or the gleaming Caprea, smiling amidst the smiles of the sea. She heard not a step that had followed her on her path, and started to hear a voice at hand. So sudden was the apparition of the form that stood by her side, emerging from the bushes that clad the crags, and so singularly did it harmonize in its uncouth ugliness with the wild nature of the scene immediately around her, and the wizard traditions of the place, that the color left her cheek, and a faint cry broke from her lips. "Tush, pretty trembler, do not be frightened at my face," said the man with a bitter smile. "After 3 months' marriage, there is no difference between ugliness and beauty. Custom is a great leveler. I was coming to your house when I saw you leave it, so as I have matters of importance to communicate, I ventured to follow your footsteps. My name is Jean Nicot, a name already favorably known as a French artist. The art of painting and the art of music are nearly connected, and the stage is an altar that unites the two." There was something frank and unembarrassed in the man's address that served to dispel the fear his appearance had occasioned. He seated himself, as he spoke, on a crag beside her, and, looking up steadily into her face, continued, "You are very beautiful, Viola Pisani, and I am not surprised at the number of your admirers. If I presume to place myself in the list, it is because I am the only one who loves thee honestly, and who woos thee fairly. Nay, look not so indignant. Listen to me. Has the prince ever spoken to thee of marriage, or the beautiful impostor Zanoni, or the young blue-eyed Englishman, Clarence Glendon? It is marriage, it is a home, it is safety, it is reputation that I offer to thee, and these last when the straight form grows crooked and the bright eyes dim. What say you?" And he attempted to seize her hand. Viola shrunk from him and silently turned to depart. He rose abruptly and placed himself on her path. "Actress, you must hear me. Do you know what this calling of the stage is in the eyes of prejudice, that is, of the common opinion of mankind? It is to be a princess before the lamps, and a pariah before the day. No man believes in your virtue, no man credits your vows. You are the puppet that they consent to trick out with tinsel for their amusement, not an idol for their worship. Are you so enamored of this career that you scorn even to think of security and honor? Perhaps you are different from what you seem. Perhaps you laugh at the prejudice that would degrade you, and would wisely turn it to advantage. Speak frankly to me. I have no prejudice either. Sweet one, I am sure we should agree. Now, this prince, I have a message from him. Shall I deliver it? Now, this prince, I have a message from him. Shall I deliver it? Never had Viola felt as she felt then. Never had she so thoroughly seen all the perils of her forlorn condition and her fearful renown. Nicot continued. Zanoni would but amuse himself with thy vanity. Glyndon would despise himself if he offered thee his name, and thee if thou wouldst accept it. But the prince is in earnest, and he is wealthy. Listen!" And Nicot approached his lips to her, and hissed a sentence which she did not suffer him to complete. She darted from him with one glance of unutterable disdain. As he strove to regain his hold of her arm, he lost his footing and fell down the sides of the rock, till, bruised and lacerated, a pine branch saved him from the yawning abyss below. She heard his exclamation of rage and pain as she bounded down the path, and, without once turning to look behind, regained her home. By the porch stood Glyndon, conversing with Giannetta. She passed him abruptly, entered the house, and, sinking on the floor, wept loud and passionately. Glyndon, who had followed her in surprise, vainly sought to soothe and calm her. She would not reply to his questions. She did not seem to listen to his protestations of love, till suddenly, as Nicot's terrible picture of the world's judgment of that profession, which to her younger thoughts had seemed the service of song and the beautiful, forced itself upon her, she raised her face from her hands, and, looking steadily upon the Englishman, said, "False one, dost thou talk to me of love? By my honor, words fail to tell thee how I love thee. Wilt thou give me thy home, thy name? Dost thou woo me as thy wife?" And at that moment, had Glyndon answered as his better angel would have counselled, perhaps in that revolution of her whole mind which the words of Nicot had effected, which made her despise her very self, sicken of her lofty dreams, despair of the future, and distrust her whole ideal, perhaps, I say, in restoring her self-esteem, he would have won her confidence, and ultimately secured her love. But against the prompting of his nobler nature rose up at that sudden question all those doubts which, as Zanoni had so well implied, made the true enemies of his soul. Was he thus suddenly to be entangled into a snare laid for his credulity by deceivers? Was she not instructed to seize the moment to force him into an avowal which prudence must repent? Was not the great actress rehearsing a premeditated part? He turned round, as these thoughts, the children of the world, passed across him, for he literally fancied that he heard the sarcastic laugh of Mervale without. Nor was he deceived. Mervale was passing by the threshold, and Giannetta had told him his friend was within. Who does not know the effect of the world's laugh? Mervale was the personation of the world. The whole world seemed to shout derision in those ringing tones. He drew back. He recoiled. Viola followed him with earnest, impatient eyes. At last he faltered forth, "Do all of thy profession, beautiful Viola, exact marriage as the sole condition of love?" Oh, bitter question! Oh, poisoned taunt! He repented it the moment after. He was seized with remorse of reason, of feeling, and of conscience. He saw her form shrink, as it were, at his cruel words. He saw the color come and go, to leave the writhing lips like marble, and then, with a sad, gentle look of self-pity rather than reproach, she pressed her hands tightly to her bosom and said, "He was right. Pardon me, Englishman. I see now, indeed, that I am the pariah and the outcast." "Hear me! I retract! Viola! Viola! It is for you to forgive!" But Viola waved him from her, and, smiling mournfully as she passed him by, glided from the chamber, and he did not dare to detain her.